More than 70% of Earth is covered by ocean, yet the vast majority of its living space lies far below the surface, where sunlight weakens and the familiar rules of the surface world begin to fade. Between roughly 200 and 1,000 meters beneath the sea exists a layer oceanographers call the Twilight Zone. Sunlight still arrives here, but only faintly. The water turns dim and blue, and color begins to disappear. At first glance, it appears to be a place where life should be limited. Temperatures remain cold throughout the year. Food drifting down from above is scarce. Light arrives only as a fading glow that struggles to travel much farther. For a long time, scientists assumed this region was mostly empty. That assumption began to change during naval sonar surveys in the 1900s. Instruments designed to detect submarines began recording something unexpected. Strong echoes appeared deep in the water column, forming wide layers that stretched for kilometers. At first, researchers believed the equipment was detecting the seafloor, but the signals moved. During the night, the entire layer slowly rose toward the surface. Before morning arrived, it sank again into deeper water. The ocean floor, of course, does not travel hundreds of meters every evening. What the sonar had discovered was something far stranger. Vast clouds of living animals were moving through the ocean together. Tiny fish, squid, shrimp, gelatinous drifters with fragile bodies, creatures so numerous that their combined bodies reflected sonar waves like solid ground. This movement happens across oceans around the world. Every evening, billions of animals rise from the Twilight Zone toward shallower waters. Before daylight returns, they descend again into deeper blue darkness. The pattern repeats every day across distances that would exhaust most surface animals. Many of the creatures involved are rarely seen by humans. Some produce their own light along their bodies. Others are nearly transparent, fading into the surrounding water until they are almost invisible. Some carry enormous eyes designed to capture the faintest traces of light filtering down from above. A few look almost unreal. The viperfish drifts through this layer with teeth like long needles and small glowing organs running along its body. Other species possess heads so transparent that their internal organs remain visible through the skin, and many animals here remain poorly understood. The Twilight Zone lies too deep for ordinary scuba diving. Nets often destroy the most delicate organisms before they reach the surface. Cameras struggle to capture creatures that vanish quickly into darkness. As a result, large portions of this ocean layer remain only partially explored. This video explores the animals that inhabit the ocean's Twilight Zone and the vast hidden migration that unfolds there every day. Water does not hide the sun all at once. The change happens gradually, almost politely, as the ocean grows deeper and the light from above begins to thin. Near the surface, sunlight pours freely into the sea, filling the upper waters with brightness and warmth. Waves scatter the light into dancing fragments that reach in every direction. Yet with every meter of descent, the ocean quietly filters that energy away. The water itself becomes a slow gatekeeper, absorbing colors and dimming intensity long before the bottom of the sea is reached. The region known as the Twilight Zone stretches from roughly 200 meters beneath the surface down to nearly 1,000 meters. It forms a broad middle layer of the ocean, suspended between the luminous waters above and the vast darkness that fills the deep sea below. Within this depth range, the sun still exists as a presence, though it arrives only as a distant echo of its former brightness. Sunlight weakens quickly underwater because water molecules and tiny drifting particles intercept the light as it travels downward. The longest wavelengths vanish first. Reds disappear within only a few meters. Oranges and yellows fade soon after. What remains longer are the shorter blue wavelengths that slip farther through the water before finally fading as well. By the time the ocean reaches the upper edge of the twilight zone, most of the sun's spectrum has already dissolved into the surrounding sea. The result is a world illuminated by a faint, cold glow. It is not true darkness. A dim blue haze still drifts through the water, often strongest during the day when the sun stands high above the surface. Shapes can still exist here, though they appear softened and indistinct, as if seen through deep fog. The farther downward one travels, the weaker that glow becomes, until the boundary of complete darkness finally arrives below. For creatures adapted to these depths, even this weak light remains meaningful. The faint shimmer from above reveals the silhouettes of animals moving higher in the water column. Subtle shifts in brightness mark the slow passage of day into night. In this dim environment, the difference between a trace of light and none at all can shape the entire rhythm of life. Humans rarely enter this region directly. Standard scuba diving remains limited by the pressure of the surrounding water and the amount of breathable gas a diver can safely carry. Around 200 meters, conditions become extremely difficult even for highly specialized diving equipment. The twilight zone lies almost entirely beyond the comfortable reach of human divers. For most of history, the only glimpses of this layer came from instruments lowered from ships above. Nets could be dragged through the water, though the delicate animals often arrived damaged after the long ascent. Cameras struggled with the darkness, while fragile bodies sometimes vanished before they could be recorded clearly. Pressure increases steadily with depth, compressing air spaces and straining equipment not designed for such conditions. Even small failures in seals or lighting systems could end an expedition before it truly began. As a result, the Twilight Zone remained a distant and uncertain landscape for ocean science during much of the 20th century, yet this vast layer occupies an enormous portion of the ocean's total living space. It stretches around the globe, filling the open water between continents and beneath shipping lanes, a dim corridor that encircles the planet beneath the waves. For a long time, its quiet depths kept their inhabitants hidden behind distance, pressure, and darkness, allowing an entire community of midwater life to exist largely beyond the reach of direct observation. Long before cameras could wander through the midwater depths, the first hint of hidden life arrived as a quiet pattern on naval instruments. During the middle decades of the 20th century, ships began carrying increasingly sensitive sonar systems. These devices were designed for a practical purpose. By sending pulses of sound through the ocean and measuring the returning echoes, naval crews could detect submarines or map the shape of the seafloor beneath their vessels. Sound travels efficiently through seawater, and the echoes often revealed structures far below the surface that no human eye could reach. Yet operators soon began noticing a strange and persistent signal. When sonar pulses descended through the water column, the returning echoes sometimes formed a broad band suspended far above the seabed. On display screens, this signal appeared almost like a second ocean floor, floating in midwater. It stretched across large areas, sometimes extending for many kilometers beneath the ship. At first, many assumed the instruments were simply detecting irregular features of the seabed or layers of sediment drifting through the water. The signal seemed too consistent to represent scattered animals. It appeared solid, as though something continuous filled that entire depth. Then the pattern began to behave in ways that seafloors never do, and then night after night, sonar operators recorded the same strange movement. As evening approached, the mysterious layer began to rise slowly through the water. The echoes climbed upward by hundreds of meters. Several hours later, shortly before the first light of morning reached the sea above, the layer gradually sank again toward deeper depths. The motion repeated with remarkable regularity. Researchers studying naval records began to realize that this moving band could not represent geological structures. The seafloor remains fixed. Even drifting sediment would not rise and fall with such steady timing each day. Something alive had to be responsible. Further investigation revealed that the sonar pulses were reflecting from countless small bodies scattered through the water. Individually, each animal was tiny and fragile. Together, however, their combined presence formed an enormous living cloud, dense enough to reflect sound waves back toward the surface. Oceanographers eventually named this phenomenon the deep scattering layer. The term described exactly what the sonar instruments were detecting. Each pulse of sound scattered off thousands of organisms suspended in the twilight depths, producing a diffuse echo that appeared on sonar displays as a thick, moving band. The layer was not a single species, but an entire community traveling together through the ocean's middle waters. Within it lived small fish, shrimp, squid, and gelatinous animals whose delicate forms rarely survived the journey to the surface in nets. Many possessed reflective tissues or gas-filled structures within their bodies, features that happened to bounce sonar signals efficiently back toward the ships above. What astonished scientists most was the scale of the movement. As dusk spread across the ocean, this immense population rose upward through the water column. The animals climbed toward shallower layers, where food drifting from the surface was more abundant. Hours later, before daylight strengthened above, the entire community sank again into deeper water. The migration occurred across vast regions of the world's oceans. Wherever sonar surveys traveled, similar moving layers appeared beneath the ships. The same nightly ascent and descent repeated in open seas, thousands of kilometers apart. Gradually, a realization settled among ocean scientists. They were observing one of the largest coordinated movements of life on Earth, a migration unfolding every day beyond the reach of ordinary sight. What had first appeared as a technical curiosity on military equipment had revealed a hidden pulse within the ocean itself. In the dim waters far below the surface, entire populations were rising and sinking together, their presence invisible to passing ships except through the quiet echoes of sound traveling through the sea. Evening arrives slowly over the open ocean. The surface cools, the wind softens, and the fading light of the sun spreads into a broad orange glow across the water. Beneath that quiet surface, far below the reach of ordinary sight, an immense movement begins to unfold. Across the twilight depths, countless small animals begin to rise. The movement does not happen all at once. It begins as scattered individuals, leaving the deeper layers, drifting upward through the water column. Soon the motion spreads through the entire community. Fish, shrimp, squid, and fragile gelatinous drifters all join the ascent, their bodies gradually climbing through hundreds of meters of ocean. This journey happens every night. As daylight fades above the sea, the dim environment of the Midwater region becomes safer for animals that spend most of their lives hidden below. In darkness, predators that hunt by sight lose their advantage. The ocean grows more forgiving, and the animals of the twilight zone begin their long climb toward shallower waters where food is far more abundant. Near the surface layers, microscopic plankton drift in enormous numbers. Many of these tiny organisms grow through the day using energy from sunlight, forming the foundation of ocean food webs. When night arrives, the creatures from deeper water approach these plankton-rich layers to feed. Small fish weave among drifting particles of life. Shrimp sweep the water with delicate appendages, gathering fragments of organic matter. Squid glide silently through the darkness, searching for smaller prey that has also risen toward the surface. The entire migration unfolds with remarkable precision. Animals begin ascending shortly after sunset and continue climbing for hours, spreading through the upper layers of the ocean during the darkest part of the night. Some travel several hundred meters during this nightly journey, a significant distance for creatures only a few centimeters long. As the hours pass and the first pale signs of morning approach the horizon, the movement quietly reverses. One by one, the animals begin to descend again. The return journey carries them back toward the deeper waters that provide safety during the day. In the brighter upper ocean, visual predators such as larger fish and seabirds become active hunters. Remaining near the surface would expose these smaller animals to constant danger. So before the sun fully returns, the entire community sinks downward once more, settling into the dim layers far below. This cycle repeats every day across the oceans of the world. From polar seas to tropical waters, enormous populations of animals participate in this synchronized movement between deep and shallow layers. The migration forms a slow vertical tide of living creatures that rises each night and falls again with the coming dawn. Scientists refer to this phenomenon as diel vertical migration. The term describes the daily pattern of animals traveling up and down through the water column in response to the cycle of light and darkness that shapes life across the planet. What makes this migration extraordinary is its sheer scale. The number of animals involved reaches far beyond ordinary imagination. Estimates suggest that billions, and possibly trillions, of individual creatures participate in this daily ascent and descent. Lanternfish alone may exist in such enormous numbers that their combined biomass rivals that of many larger ocean animals. Every night, this immense population moves through the ocean together, creating one of the largest coordinated migrations on Earth. Unlike migrations across land or along coastlines, this movement unfolds silently within the open water. No waves mark its passage, and no distant horizon reveals its scale. The entire event occurs beneath the surface, hidden from view except through the patient instruments that first detected its presence. Within the quiet depths of the Twilight Zone, the ocean breathes in a slow rhythm of rising life and returning shadows, a pattern repeating across the planet with the steady passage of night and day. Ocean exploration often begins with a simple descent. A diver enters the water, adjusts their equipment, and follows the gradual pull of gravity toward deeper layers. In the upper ocean, this method works well, allowing people to observe reefs, fish, and drifting life directly within the surrounding water. Yet beyond a certain depth, the sea quietly closes that path. The Twilight Zone lies almost entirely beyond the practical reach of ordinary scuba diving. Human bodies depend on carefully balanced mixtures of breathing gases. As pressure increases with depth, these gases behave differently inside the lungs and bloodstream. Nitrogen begins to affect the nervous system, producing a condition divers describe as nitrogen narcosis. Oxygen, essential at the surface, can become harmful when compressed beyond safe limits. Managing these effects requires specialized gas mixtures and complex decompression schedules. Even with advanced training and equipment, diving deeper than about 200 meters becomes extremely demanding. The descent must be slow, the ascent even slower, and every moment underwater consumes precious breathing gas. The Twilight Zone extends far below these limits, placing most of its living space beyond the range where divers can remain safely for meaningful observation. Because of these limits, early oceanographers relied heavily on nets lowered from ships above. Large trawls were dragged through the midwater depths, gathering whatever organisms happened to drift into their path. When the nets were hauled back to the surface, scientists examined the catch and tried to piece together the community that lived far below. Yet this method came with a hidden cost. Many inhabitants of the Twilight Zone possess extremely delicate bodies. Some fish carry fragile skeletal structures designed for buoyancy rather than strength. Gelatinous animals such as comb jellies and siphonophores exist as soft, almost liquid forms held together by thin tissues. During the long journey upward inside a net, these organisms often collapsed or tore apart. Pressure also changes dramatically during the ascent. Creatures adapted to the steady compression of deep water sometimes expand or rupture when brought toward the lower pressures of the surface. By the time the nets reached the deck of the research vessel, many animals had lost the shapes they once held in their natural environment. As a result, early collections provided only partial glimpses of the midwater world. Even when intact specimens arrived at the surface, they represented animals removed from the dim surroundings where their behaviors unfolded. Color patterns, body posture, and subtle movements often disappeared once the animals were confined within containers of surface water. Direct observation remained difficult for another reason as well. Light fades steadily with depth, and the twilight zone exists in a realm where illumination becomes extremely limited. Cameras lowered into the water must rely on artificial lights to record images. Yet bright lights can disturb animals that evolved within gentle darkness, causing them to flee before researchers can study them. Pressure adds another challenge for equipment itself. At several hundred meters below the surface, the surrounding water presses inward with enormous force. Electronic housings must be carefully sealed and reinforced. A small structural weakness can allow seawater to flood delicate instruments in moments. Because of these combined difficulties, oceanographers gradually turned to more advanced technology. Remotely operated vehicles, often called ROVs, carry cameras, sensors, and mechanical arms into the depths while remaining connected to research ships by long cables. Pilots guide these machines from control rooms above, maneuvering slowly through the midwater environment while watching live video transmitted from the vehicle's cameras. Submersibles capable of carrying human observers also play a role in modern exploration. Encased within thick pressure-resistant hulls, scientists can descend directly into the twilight zone and witness its inhabitants moving freely through the surrounding water. These technologies have opened quiet windows into a region that remained hidden for much of scientific history, revealing delicate communities suspended within a vast and dim ocean corridor. Far from the drifting crowds of smaller creatures, certain hunters move through the twilight zone with a patience shaped by scarcity. Among them is a fish whose appearance seems almost skeletal, as if the outline of a predator had been stretched thin by the quiet pressures of deep water. This is Sloan's viperfish. Its body is long and narrow, usually no longer than a human hand, colored in dark shades that merge easily with the surrounding depths. The head forms a large portion of its shape, tapering into a mouth that opens far wider than the rest of the fish suggests. Within that mouth grows a set of teeth so long that they appear almost disproportionate to the animal that carries them. Each tooth curves inward like a slender needle. Several extend beyond the length of the head itself, rising upward when the mouth closes so that they rest in grooves along the upper jaw. The arrangement allows the fish to seal its mouth despite the remarkable length of these fangs, forming a cage of interlocking points designed to hold struggling prey. The skeleton supporting this structure remains surprisingly delicate. Bones are light and thin, reducing weight in a place where conserving energy is essential. Muscles concentrate around the jaws and along the tail, allowing sudden bursts of movement when the moment to strike arrives. Along the sides of the body runs a series of tiny light-producing organs, known as photophores. Each one contains specialized cells capable of generating faint blue glows through biochemical reactions. In the darkness of the deeper ocean, such lights might appear bright, yet here they shine only as soft points along the fish's narrow frame. These lights do not blaze constantly. Many remain dim or flicker gently, blending with the scattered illumination of other glowing animals nearby. The pattern may help disguise the fish's outline or allow individuals of the same species to recognize one another in the open water. Beneath the lower jaw hangs a slender filament that sways gently as the fish drifts. At the end of this thread sits a small, luminous organ, forming a quiet lantern that glows just ahead of the mouth. The structure functions as a lure, drawing the curiosity of smaller animals moving through the surrounding water. In the twilight zone, even a faint point of light can stand out against the muted environment. Tiny crustaceans or young fish sometimes approach these glimmers, interpreting them as drifting food or perhaps the glow of harmless plankton. The viperfish remains still while this happens, holding position with only slight adjustments of its fins. Patience defines the hunt. The fish often suspends itself, nearly motionless in the water, conserving energy while waiting for movement nearby. Its large eyes watch the dim surroundings carefully. When prey wanders close to the glowing lure, the predator reacts with remarkable speed. The jaws open suddenly, the body lunges forward, and the long teeth close around the target in a swift arc. Once caught, escape becomes almost impossible. The inward curve of the teeth guides prey deeper into the mouth, while flexible ligaments allow the jaws to stretch around animals surprisingly large for such a slender hunter. After feeding, the fish returns to its quiet, drifting posture, its luminous filament again hanging in front of the dark mouth. Though individually small, these predators play a steady role within the twilight community. They feed upon the many creatures passing through the midwater layers, shaping the balance between hunter and prey within this dim environment. Through delicate bones, patient stillness, and the faint glow of living light, the viperfish moves through the open ocean as a quiet specialist of the depths, perfectly adapted to life where daylight barely lingers. In the muted world of the midwater ocean, light usually appears in shades of blue or green. These colors travel most easily through seawater, slipping through the dim layers where sunlight barely lingers. Many glowing organisms in this realm share this same palette, producing gentle flashes that blend naturally with the surrounding darkness. Yet among the quiet hunters of the Twilight Zone lives a fish that carries a very different kind of light. The dragonfish moves through the water with a narrow, elongated body and a head shaped for capturing prey. Its skin is dark, almost velvet in texture, absorbing the faint traces of illumination drifting through the ocean. Along the underside of its body rests a series of light-producing organs, arranged with careful spacing that forms a delicate pattern across the fish's silhouette. Near the eyes, however, another pair of luminous structures appears. These organs glow with a deeper hue, one rarely seen in the midwater environment. Instead of blue or green, they produce red light. To creatures living closer to the surface, red may seem ordinary, yet within the ocean it behaves very differently. Long wavelengths fade rapidly as they travel through seawater. Even sunlight loses its red tones within the upper layers of the ocean, leaving deeper environments dominated by cooler colors. Because of this natural filtering, most animals that inhabit the Twilight Zone have evolved visual systems tuned to detect blue light. Their eyes gather faint traces of this color, allowing them to sense movement in the dim surroundings where other wavelengths rarely appear. Red light remains largely invisible to them. The dragonfish carries an unusual advantage in this environment. Within its eyes are pigments capable of detecting the very color most other animals cannot perceive. This adaptation allows the fish to see the red illumination produced by its own glowing organs. In practice, The dragonfish moves through the water carrying what resembles a pair of living headlights. The red beams extend gently ahead of the fish, illuminating nearby shapes without revealing the source to animals lacking the ability to detect that color. Small crustaceans and fish drifting through the water remain unaware that they have entered a faint circle of light. Within that private glow, the dragonfish observes its surroundings with remarkable precision. Its jaws, lined with slender teeth, open wide when prey approaches within striking distance. The fish lunges forward in a swift motion, capturing animals that never perceived the quiet illumination revealing their presence. This method creates a form of stealth rarely found among predators that rely on vision. The dragonfish does not depend solely on the scattered glimmers produced by other organisms. Instead, it brings its own light into the darkness, yet does so in a wavelength hidden from the sight of most neighbors. The glow beneath the eyes works alongside other luminous organs along the body, forming patterns that may also help disguise the fish when viewed from below. In the midwater environment, many animals carry small lights across their undersides that soften their silhouettes when faint light filters downward from above. For the dragonfish, illumination becomes both tool and camouflage. Scientists studying these animals often describe their ability to produce red light as one of the most unusual adaptations found in the ocean's middle depths. Few species possess this capability, and those that do occupy a quiet niche within the community of midwater hunters. Within the dim layers where sunlight fades into memory, the dragonfish moves through open water with its hidden beams sweeping gently ahead, revealing a private landscape invisible to the many creatures drifting nearby. In the wide midwater expanses, countless small bodies move together with quiet persistence. They do not stand out individually. A single fish may pass unnoticed through the dim surroundings, its shape narrow and unremarkable. Yet when these animals gather in their immense numbers, they form one of the most significant populations in the entire ocean. These are the lanternfish. Most species measure only a few centimeters in length. Their bodies are slender and flexible, built for steady swimming rather than sudden bursts of speed. Scales cover their sides in dark tones that merge easily with the surrounding water, allowing them to slip through the midwater community without attracting unnecessary attention. Along their bellies and flanks runs a carefully arranged series of tiny light-producing organs known as photophores. Each species carries its own pattern, a constellation of small luminous points that distinguishes one kind of lanternfish from another. These lights glow with soft blue tones that blend naturally into the faint illumination present in their environment. The photophores are not simply decoration. Their glow helps lanternfish control how they appear when viewed from different angles. Predators observing from below may detect silhouettes against the dim light filtering downward from distant surface waters. By producing light along the underside of their bodies, lanternfish can soften these silhouettes, reducing the contrast that might reveal their presence. The technique is sometimes described as counterillumination. The fish match the brightness of the faint light above them, allowing their bodies to merge more seamlessly with the surrounding water. While individual lanternfish remain small, their numbers across the world's oceans reach extraordinary levels. Marine surveys using sonar and deep water sampling have revealed populations so vast that scientists estimate the total number of lanternfish may reach into the trillions. This abundance gives them enormous ecological importance. Lanternfish consume tiny drifting organisms such as zooplankton, converting these microscopic sources of energy into living tissue that can support larger predators. Squid, larger fish, and even some marine mammals depend on lanternfish, as a reliable food source within the midwater ecosystem. Through this role, they form a bridge between the smallest producers of life near the surface and the many animals that hunt within deeper layers. Each day, their movements contribute to a quiet transfer of energy through the ocean. When darkness spreads across the sea, vast populations of lanternfish rise toward shallower waters to feed on drifting plankton. Later, they return to deeper levels, carrying with them the energy gathered from those feeding grounds. In this way, they help move organic material through different layers of the ocean, linking distant habitats through their daily activity. Their bodies also play a part in broader planetary cycles. Waste products and uneaten fragments produced by lanternfish sink gradually through the water column, transporting carbon toward deeper regions of the sea, where it can remain stored for long periods of time. Even after death, their sinking bodies contribute to this slow downward movement of material. Despite their small size, lanternfish collectively represent one of the largest reservoirs of fish biomass on Earth. Their presence fills enormous portions of the midwater ocean, forming living populations that stretch across basins and beneath distant shipping routes. Within the quiet layers of the Twilight Zone, these small glowing fish travel together through the open water, their scattered lights flickering gently as they swim. A vast community whose combined presence shapes the balance of life throughout the ocean's depths. Some animals of the Twilight Zone survive not through strength or speed, but through an extraordinary ability to vanish. Their strategy depends on subtlety rather than pursuit, allowing them to exist within the open water without drawing attention from the many hunters that pass through these depths. Among the most skillful practitioners of this quiet art are the hatchetfish. Their bodies appear almost impossibly thin when viewed from the front, compressed from side to side into a narrow profile that slices through the water like the blade of a small tool. From the side, however, the fish reveal a deep, rounded shape that gives the group its name. The body resembles the curved outline of a hatchet, with the broad lower portion tapering upward toward a smaller head. The surface of that body carries a remarkable sheen. Each scale reflects the faint illumination drifting through the surrounding water, creating a bright, metallic finish that resembles polished silver. In stronger light, the fish might appear conspicuous, yet within the dim environment of the midwater ocean, the reflective skin serves a more subtle purpose. Light arriving from above does not simply shine downward in straight beams. As it passes through the ocean, it becomes scattered in many directions, forming a diffuse glow that surrounds objects from multiple angles. The reflective scales of the hatchetfish mirror this scattered light, breaking up the outline of the animal and allowing it to blend with the shifting brightness around it. Rather than absorbing the light, the fish returns it to the water. Viewed from the side, the body reflects the dim surroundings so effectively that the fish can appear almost like a fragment of the water itself, difficult to distinguish from the gentle flickers of brightness moving through the environment. The shape of the body supports this disguise. The narrow front profile reduces the chance of casting a visible silhouette, especially when predators approach from below or ahead. At the same time, the deeper sides provide space for internal organs while maintaining a form that remains surprisingly inconspicuous in the water column. The head of the hatchetfish carries another striking feature. Its eyes are unusually large and directed upward rather than forward. Each eye forms a rounded dome positioned to observe the water above the fish. This orientation allows the animal to detect movement or faint shadows drifting overhead. In the Twilight Zone, much of the remaining light arrives from higher layers of the ocean. Objects crossing that distant glow can reveal themselves as darker shapes against the background. By gazing upward, the hatchetfish gains early awareness of animals passing through those higher levels. The eyes gather even the smallest traces of illumination, helping the fish notice approaching predators before they draw too near. When danger appears, the hatchetfish relies once again on its reflective disguise. Instead of fleeing immediately, it often remains motionless, trusting the mirrored scales to dissolve its outline against the scattered brightness of the water. In many cases, the predator continues onward, unable to separate the fish from the shifting light around it. This approach conserves valuable energy. Constant swimming would demand resources that are not always easy to obtain in the midwater environment. By combining subtle camouflage with careful observation, the hatchetfish maintains its place within the community of drifting animals without unnecessary movement. Across the twilight depths, these small fish hover quietly in the water, their silver bodies catching and returning the faint glow that filters from above. In that dim environment, reflection becomes a form of disappearance, allowing the hatchetfish to persist within a landscape where remaining unseen can mean the difference between survival and loss. In certain corners of the twilight zone, shapes appear that seem almost impossible at first glance. Among drifting particles and passing silhouettes moves a small fish whose head carries an unusual clarity, as though part of its body had been carved from glass rather than living tissue. This is the Barreleye fish. The body itself follows a familiar design for midwater species. It is compact, dark along the back, and tapered toward the tail for steady swimming. The fins remain small and controlled, allowing the fish to hover quietly in place with minimal effort. Nothing in the outline of the body immediately suggests the unusual structure resting at the front. The head forms a rounded dome that appears nearly transparent. Instead of opaque bone and skin, the upper portion of the skull consists of a clear, fluid-filled shield that curves smoothly over the top of the face. Through this dome, internal structures remain visible, revealing features that would normally be hidden inside a fish's head. Most striking are the eyes. They appear as two bright green cylinders positioned deep within the transparent chamber. At first, they seem fixed in place, directed upward toward the dim light filtering from distant waters above. Their shape resembles narrow tubes rather than the spherical eyes common in many fish, an arrangement that allows them to gather faint light with remarkable efficiency. Within the twilight zone, illumination remains scarce and scattered. Detecting even the faintest movement overhead can mean the difference between finding food and drifting past it unnoticed. The unusual eyes of the Barreleye fish concentrate incoming light onto sensitive retinal surfaces, amplifying the weak signals available in this environment. For many years, scientists believed these eyes remained permanently pointed upward. Early specimens collected in nets often showed the tubular eyes frozen in that position, reinforcing the assumption that the fish spent most of its time observing objects above. This orientation seemed logical, since many drifting animals move through higher layers where the remaining glow of distant daylight still exists. Later observations, using remotely operated vehicles, revealed a more flexible reality. Within the transparent chamber, the eyes can rotate. Muscles inside the head allow the tubular structures to pivot forward when necessary, shifting their gaze from the water above to the space directly ahead. This movement gives the fish the ability to watch for prey in multiple directions while maintaining its quiet position in the water. The clear dome surrounding the eyes serves an important protective role. It shields these delicate organs while allowing light to pass through with minimal distortion. At the same time, the dome maintains the smooth outer shape of the head, reducing turbulence as the fish moves slowly through the surrounding water. Beneath the transparent chamber lies a small mouth positioned to capture drifting prey. The barreleye fish often feeds on tiny animals suspended in the water column, including gelatinous organisms that glide silently through the midwater environment. By watching the space above and ahead, the fish can detect these slow-moving targets as they drift within reach. When food approaches, the barreleye adjusts its posture and advances gently, drawing the prey toward its mouth with minimal disturbance. The movement remains subtle, conserving energy while taking advantage of the careful visual surveillance provided by its unusual eyes. The result is a creature perfectly adapted to observing a quiet world. Within the dim layers, where light arrives only as a faint presence, the barreleye fish hovers with its transparent dome facing upward, the hidden eyes inside shifting slowly as they watch the drifting life moving through the twilight water. Across the twilight waters, brief flashes sometimes appear where no sunlight can reach. A point of blue glimmers softly, then fades. Another flicker follows somewhere nearby, as if distant stars had slipped quietly beneath the sea. This living glow is known as bioluminescence. Within many midwater organisms, specialized tissues contain the chemical tools needed to produce light. The process relies on a molecule called luciferin, which releases energy when it reacts with oxygen. An enzyme known as luciferase helps guide the reaction, allowing the stored chemical energy to escape as visible light. The glow appears without heat and often with remarkable efficiency. Almost all of the energy produced during the reaction becomes light rather than warmth. For creatures drifting through cold ocean layers, this efficiency allows illumination without wasting precious resources. In some animals, the light-producing chemistry takes place directly inside their own cells. Groups of specialized cells gather into tiny organs along the body, each capable of producing controlled flashes or steady glows. These clusters form the small luminous structures seen across the skin of many twilight zone fish and invertebrates. Other species rely on microscopic partners. Certain marine bacteria possess their own bioluminescent chemistry. These bacteria live within carefully maintained chambers inside their hosts. The host animal provides nutrients and a protected environment, while the bacteria produce light as part of their natural metabolism. Together, they form a quiet alliance, creating living lanterns that illuminate the dark water around them. Within the open ocean, this glow serves several different purposes. Some creatures release sudden bursts of light when threatened. The flash may startle a predator or create a momentary distraction that allows the smaller animal to escape into the surrounding darkness. In other cases, glowing particles are expelled into the water, forming drifting clouds of light that confuse a pursuing hunter. For many species, bioluminescence becomes a language of signals. Patterns of light can help individuals recognize members of their own kind in the vast midwater space. Brief pulses or steady rhythms may guide animals toward potential mates or help maintain loose groups as they move through the water column. Each species often carries its own arrangement of luminous organs, forming patterns that act like silent signatures in the dark. The glow also plays a role in concealment. Animals viewed from below often appear as dark shapes against the faint illumination descending from higher layers. By producing gentle light along their undersides, some creatures soften that contrast, allowing their bodies to merge more smoothly with the dim background above them. In this way, the glow becomes a form of camouflage rather than a beacon. Throughout the Twilight Zone, countless species carry these quiet lights. Small crustaceans release glowing trails as they swim. Squid pulse faint flashes along their bodies. Fish display rows of steady photophores arranged with remarkable precision across their skin. Even delicate gelatinous animals sometimes shimmer with soft waves of light that travel slowly across their transparent forms. Each glow appears briefly, then disappears. Together they create a scattered constellation moving through the midwater ocean, tiny lights drifting within an environment where sunlight has nearly faded away. The ocean does not remain truly dark here. Instead, it fills with countless living sparks, each one produced by a creature whose chemistry turns the energy of life itself into a quiet glow. Not every animal in the Twilight Zone relies on light to remain unseen. Some take a different path altogether, one that removes their outline almost completely from the water around them. Their bodies do not reflect the dim glow drifting from above, nor do they produce signals of their own. Instead, they approach a quieter solution, becoming nearly invisible. Transparency allows this disappearance. Many midwater shrimp, small fish, and drifting invertebrates possess tissues that transmit light rather than blocking or reflecting it. Their muscles, organs, and outer coverings contain very little pigment. Instead of forming solid shapes that interrupt the surrounding brightness, these structures allow much of the available light to pass through. The result is a body that blends with the water itself. Viewed from a distance, the animal becomes difficult to detect because its edges no longer stand out clearly against the background. In the dim environment of the Twilight Zone, where illumination already arrives weak and scattered, this effect becomes especially powerful. Small, transparent shrimp illustrate the strategy well. Their slender bodies appear almost glass-like, with delicate limbs extending outward in thin lines that barely disturb the water around them. Internal organs may remain faintly visible as pale shapes drifting inside the clear tissues, yet these details rarely form strong contrasts against the surrounding environment. When such shrimp move slowly through the water column, predators searching for solid silhouettes often overlook them entirely. Some species of fish employ similar designs. Their bodies remain colorless or only lightly tinted, allowing distant light to travel through their tissues rather than forming a dark outline. Scales become thin or reduced, and pigmentation remains minimal. From certain angles, the fish appear almost absent, visible only when they pass directly in front of something brighter behind them. Even then, the view may last only a moment. The effectiveness of transparency depends strongly on the conditions present in midwater habitats. The Twilight Zone does not contain the bright directional light common in shallow environments. Instead, illumination arrives from many directions in faint and scattered forms. Under these circumstances, solid shadows rarely appear with sharp edges. A transparent body takes advantage of this diffuse lighting. Because light passes through rather than stopping at the animal's surface, the contrast between organism and environment remains extremely low. The eye of a predator scanning the water may simply interpret the space as empty, failing to distinguish the nearly invisible body suspended within it. Maintaining transparency requires certain adjustments to anatomy. Pigmented structures must remain limited, and tissues often become thin and carefully arranged. Some organs shift position within the body to reduce their visibility from outside. In certain species, reflective layers surround internal structures that might otherwise appear too dark against the surrounding water. Movement also remains gentle. Sudden or rapid motion could disrupt the illusion, creating ripples or flashes that reveal the animal's presence. Many transparent organisms therefore drift quietly or swim with slow, deliberate strokes that minimize disturbance in the water around them. Within the midwater ecosystem, this approach offers an efficient form of protection. Instead of fleeing constantly from danger or constructing heavy defenses, these animals rely on absence. Their bodies occupy space within the water column while appearing almost indistinguishable from the surrounding fluid. As they drift among countless other organisms of the Twilight Zone, the transparent shrimp and fish become living gaps within the ocean itself, present yet nearly impossible to see in the soft, scattered light that fills this quiet layer of the sea. Light becomes precious long before true darkness arrives. In the middle layers of the ocean, illumination weakens until it exists only as a faint suggestion of brightness filtering from far above. Within this subtle glow, vision does not disappear, yet it demands extraordinary sensitivity. Many animals living here carry eyes that appear disproportionately large compared to the rest of their bodies. A small fish drifting through the Twilight Zone may devote a remarkable portion of its head to vision alone. Rounded eyes extend outward from the skull, sometimes forming the most prominent feature of the entire animal. The body itself remains compact and streamlined, yet the eyes grow wide and dark, gathering every trace of available light. This enlargement follows a simple physical principle. The more surface area an eye possesses, the more photons it can capture. In environments where light becomes scarce, increasing the size of the eye allows the retina to intercept a greater number of these tiny packets of energy. Even slight improvements in sensitivity may determine whether an animal detects a passing shadow or overlooks it entirely. Within the dim midwater environment, such advantages become essential. Above the Twilight Zone lies a brighter layer where faint illumination still filters downward through the ocean. Creatures moving in those higher waters sometimes appear as subtle silhouettes when viewed from below. A fish equipped with large eyes can detect these distant movements against the dim glow above, recognizing potential food drifting slowly downward. The retina inside these enlarged eyes contains densely packed, light-sensitive cells. Many belong to a type known as rods, which specialize in detecting faint brightness rather than detailed color. Rod cells respond strongly to small amounts of light, allowing the animal to register motion or contrast even when illumination remains extremely limited. As a result, Twilight Zone animals often sacrifice color vision in favor of sensitivity. The world they perceive becomes one of soft contrasts and gentle shifts in brightness rather than vivid hues. Movement stands out more clearly than color, and the eyes become tuned to detect subtle differences between light and shadow. The relationship between eye size and body size reflects this evolutionary pressure. Species inhabiting brighter coastal waters may maintain modest eyes relative to their bodies, since abundant light reduces the need for extreme sensitivity. In the Twilight Zone, however, many animals devote additional space and energy to their visual systems. Larger eyes require greater investment in tissue and neural processing, yet the benefits outweigh the costs in such dim surroundings. Some species develop eyes that face upward, focusing specifically on the faint glow filtering through distant layers. Others position their eyes to monitor multiple directions, balancing awareness of movement above with observation of nearby water. In several midwater fish, the eyes become almost tubular in shape, narrowing into elongated cylinders that concentrate incoming light onto specialized areas of the retina. This design increases the ability to detect silhouettes against the weak background illumination. Such structures may appear unusual to human observers, yet they represent careful adjustments shaped by the challenges of living in a dim environment. Through countless generations, Individuals capable of perceiving slightly weaker signals gained small advantages. They located drifting prey more effectively, avoided approaching predators sooner, and navigated the midwater landscape with greater awareness. Gradually, these advantages reshaped anatomy itself. The result can be seen in the wide, attentive eyes that characterize so many Twilight Zone creatures. In a world where light fades almost to nothing, vision expands to meet the challenge, allowing these animals to read the faintest hints of movement within the quiet layers of the ocean. Movement in the midwater ocean does not always come from strong muscles or powerful tails. In many places within the Twilight Zone, entire communities exist that travel slowly with the surrounding currents, allowing the water itself to carry them through the vast open space. Among the most delicate inhabitants of this drifting world are gelatinous animals. Their bodies contain large amounts of water held together by thin layers of living tissue. Instead of firm bones or dense muscles, they rely on flexible structures that maintain shape while remaining extremely light. This composition allows them to remain suspended in the water column with very little effort. Comb jellies provide one example of this design. Their bodies form transparent ovals or elongated cylinders, often appearing almost invisible as they move through the ocean. Along the outer surface run rows of tiny structures known as cilia. These microscopic hairs beat in coordinated waves, producing gentle propulsion that guides the animal through the water. As the cilia move, they scatter faint reflections that travel across the surface like shifting bands of color. The motion remains graceful and quiet, creating only slight disturbances in the surrounding fluid. Unlike many other animals, comb jellies do not rely on sudden bursts of speed. Their movements remain slow and continuous, allowing them to glide gradually through the midwater environment while conserving energy. Another remarkable group drifting through the Twilight Zone is the siphonophores. At first glance, they may resemble long, fragile threads suspended in the water, yet each siphonophore is not a single animal, but a colony composed of many specialized individuals connected together. These tiny units, known as zooids, cooperate to perform different tasks within the larger organism. Some zooids capture prey using delicate tentacles that extend outward into the surrounding water. Others handle digestion, while additional members of the colony maintain buoyancy or assist with movement. Together they form structures that can stretch several meters in length, drifting like living chains through the ocean. Certain siphonophores possess faint bioluminescent abilities, producing gentle pulses of light along their extended bodies. These subtle glows travel through the colony in soft waves, creating shifting patterns that pass along the drifting structure. For animals built in this way, constant swimming would require unnecessary energy. Instead, drifting becomes a practical solution. The Twilight Zone contains many slow-moving currents that flow through the water column, carrying particles of organic matter and small organisms along with them. Gelatinous animals take advantage of these movements, positioning themselves so that passing food drifts within reach. Their bodies remain lightweight and buoyant, allowing them to hover with minimal effort. Occasional adjustments in posture or gentle pulses of movement help maintain orientation, yet most of the travel occurs through the motion of the surrounding water itself. This strategy reflects the limited resources available in the midwater ecosystem. Food does not always appear in large concentrations, and the cost of constant swimming could quickly exhaust an animal's energy reserves. By drifting, gelatinous organisms reduce their metabolic demands while still encountering the small prey that passes through the currents. Within the Twilight Zone, these delicate creatures become part of the ocean's quiet circulation. Comb jellies glide slowly with rows of cilia shimmering across their surfaces. Long siphonophore colonies extend through the water like living ribbons. Together, they drift through the vast midwater spaces, carried gently by the steady motion of the sea that surrounds them. Within the open water of the Twilight Zone, certain shapes pass swiftly through the dim surroundings, their movements smoother and more deliberate than the drifting animals nearby. Among these travelers are the squid, soft-bodied hunters whose design allows them to move with sudden precision through the midwater environment. Their bodies form tapered cylinders, flexible and streamlined. A thin mantle encloses the internal organs, expanding and contracting as the animal moves. At the rear, a pair of fins extends outward like small wings, allowing gentle adjustments in direction and balance while the squid glides through the water. The most distinctive feature of these animals lies at the front of the body. A ring of muscular arms surrounds the mouth, each arm lined with rows of small suction cups, capable of gripping prey. Between these arms extend two longer feeding tentacles that can shoot outward with remarkable speed. These tentacles carry specialized clubs at their tips, equipped with stronger suction structures designed to secure struggling animals. Movement through the water depends on a method known as jet propulsion. Inside the mantle cavity, the squid draws in water through an opening near the head. Muscles surrounding the mantle then contract, forcing the water outward through a narrow funnel. The sudden expulsion creates thrust, propelling the animal in the opposite direction. This system allows rapid bursts of motion when necessary. During quieter moments, the fins assist with slow hovering, conserving energy while the squid surveys its surroundings. When prey appears or danger approaches, the mantle muscles contract more forcefully, sending the squid forward in a swift surge. Many squid living in the Twilight Zone possess large eyes that gather faint traces of illumination drifting through the water. The eyes often appear luminous in the dim surroundings, reflecting available light and giving the animals a watchful presence as they move through the midwater space. Their vision helps them detect smaller fish, shrimp, and other drifting organisms that share the same environment. Once prey is located, the squid approaches with careful control. The long feeding tentacles extend outward suddenly, capturing the target before it can escape. The arms then draw the prey inward toward the mouth, where a sharp beak, hidden beneath the arms, breaks the food into pieces that can be consumed. Despite their soft appearance, squid play a significant role as predators within the Twilight Zone. They feed upon many smaller animals moving through the water column, helping regulate populations of fish and crustaceans. At the same time, squid themselves become food for larger hunters, including deeper-dwelling fish and marine mammals that descend into these layers. Some species possess subtle bioluminescent organs along parts of their bodies, producing faint glows that blend with the scattered light present in their environment. These lights may help soften the animal's outline when viewed from below or serve as signals between individuals traveling through the midwater community. Other adaptations appear in the composition of their tissues. Many Twilight Zone squid contain buoyant materials that reduce the effort required to remain suspended in the water column. This balance allows them to hover with minimal movement, ready to launch forward when an opportunity appears. Through these features, squid combine agility with patience. They drift briefly within the quiet water, fins adjusting their position, eyes scanning the dim surroundings. Then, with a sudden contraction of the mantle, they surge forward once more, continuing their silent passage through the Twilight Zone, where hunters and prey share the same drifting world beneath the surface. Far above the dim layers of the Twilight Zone, life near the ocean surface produces an endless stream of tiny fragments. Each day, microscopic plants grow in the sunlit waters, small animals feed upon them, and larger creatures move through the shifting communities of plankton. When pieces of this living world break away, they begin a slow descent through the open sea. This quiet, downward drift is known as marine snow. The name comes from the way these particles fall through the water column. Instead of large, solid objects sinking rapidly, marine snow consists of countless tiny flakes, drifting gently toward deeper layers like soft snowfall, moving through a vast liquid sky. Each fragment carries traces of organic material. Dead plankton cells form part of the mixture. Remains of microscopic algae, fragments of shells, and loose strands of mucus produced by small animals all gather together into irregular clumps. Fecal pellets from fish and crustaceans join the descent as well, compact bundles of partially digested material sinking steadily toward the depths. As these particles travel downward, they often merge with others along the way. Sticky surfaces allow drifting fragments to cling together, forming larger aggregates that continue their slow fall through the water. For the communities living far below the surface, this steady rain provides an important source of nourishment. Many animals of the Twilight Zone encounter food only occasionally while moving through the open water. Marine snow offers a background supply of organic matter that drifts through their environment each day. Small crustaceans and gelatinous organisms capture these falling particles using delicate appendages, filtering the water around them as the fragments pass by. Some creatures specialize in this form of feeding. They extend thin nets or feathery limbs that intercept the drifting material, drawing the particles toward their mouths. Others consume the aggregates directly, breaking apart the soft clumps and extracting the nutrients they contain. Even animals that hunt actively often rely on marine snow indirectly. Tiny organisms feeding on the descending particles become prey for larger species. Through this chain of consumption, the original fragments of plankton produced near the surface support entire layers of life far below. The journey of marine snow may continue even deeper. Some particles travel beyond the Twilight Zone, descending further toward the darker regions of the ocean. Along the way, they may be consumed repeatedly by different organisms, each transfer passing energy through another level of the marine community. Occasionally, the particles settle on the distant seafloor, carrying with them carbon and nutrients that originated in the sunlit waters above. Scientists studying these processes recognize marine snow as an important part of the ocean's carbon cycle. Organic material produced near the surface does not remain confined to those bright layers. Instead, it travels downward through the water column, linking distant habitats through the quiet movement of drifting particles. Within the Twilight Zone, this snowfall forms a constant presence. Individual fragments appear small and easily overlooked, yet together they create a steady stream of nourishment passing through the dim environment. Countless animals intercept this falling material, shaping their lives around the slow arrival of organic matter from far above. Throughout the open water, these drifting particles descend silently, carrying the remnants of surface life toward deeper layers, where they sustain the many creatures suspended within the Twilight Ocean. Resources in the Twilight Zone arrive slowly and unpredictably. Unlike the sunlit surface waters where plankton bloom and food appears in shifting abundance, the midwater environment offers far fewer opportunities for feeding. For the animals that live here, survival depends on careful management of energy. Every movement carries a cost. Mussels require fuel, and maintaining body temperature or basic cellular activity consumes resources even when an animal remains still. In an ecosystem where meals may be separated by long intervals, wasting energy can quickly become dangerous. Many Twilight Zone species therefore follow strategies shaped by restraint and efficiency. Food scarcity influences nearly every aspect of their biology. Animals drifting through these depths often encounter prey only occasionally. Small crustaceans, fragments of organic material, or passing fish may appear without warning and then disappear just as quickly. Rather than relying on constant feeding, many species adapt to endure long periods with limited nourishment. One way this happens is through a slower metabolism. Metabolism describes the collection of chemical processes that keep an organism alive. These processes release energy from food and distribute it through the body. In the Twilight Zone, metabolic rates often remain lower than those of animals living in brighter waters. A reduced metabolic pace allows creatures to survive on smaller quantities of food. Cells consume oxygen more gradually, muscles contract less frequently, and internal systems operate with careful moderation. The body becomes tuned for patience rather than constant activity. This slower rhythm influences how animals move through their environment. Instead of sustained swimming, many midwater species favor brief, controlled motions, followed by extended periods of stillness. A fish may hover quietly for long stretches, adjusting its position only when currents shift or potential prey drifts nearby. A squid may glide gently, using small fin movements rather than frequent bursts of propulsion. Even predators adopt these restrained habits. Rather than chasing prey over long distances, hunters in the Twilight Zone often rely on ambush tactics. Remaining motionless conserves valuable energy while allowing the predator to strike only when an opportunity appears within reach. Body design reflects these priorities as well. Many animals possess lightweight skeletons or tissues that help maintain neutral buoyancy in the water column. By balancing their density with that of the surrounding seawater, they avoid the constant effort required to remain suspended. The ocean itself supports their weight, allowing them to drift with minimal exertion. Certain fish contain specialized structures filled with oils or gases that help maintain this balance. Gelatinous organisms achieve similar results through bodies composed largely of water. Both approaches reduce the muscular work needed to stay at a chosen depth. Feeding behavior often emphasizes efficiency. When food becomes available, animals may consume it quickly and store energy within their tissues for later use. Lipids, which contain large amounts of stored energy, accumulate in certain organs and provide reserves that can sustain the animal during periods when prey remains scarce. The rhythm of life in these depths, therefore, unfolds slowly. Animals drift through the water with deliberate calm, conserving strength while remaining alert to subtle movements around them. Meals appear intermittently, and each successful capture supports the quiet continuation of life within the midwater community. Within the Twilight Zone, survival depends less on speed or strength than on careful balance. Every creature carries an invisible ledger of energy gained and energy spent, adjusting its movements and metabolism to remain within the narrow limits that this dim environment allows. Stillness becomes a powerful strategy in the Twilight Zone. In an environment where movement demands precious energy and prey may pass only occasionally, many hunters rely not on pursuit but on patience. They occupy quiet positions within the water column and allow the drifting life around them to approach on its own. Ambush predators thrive under these conditions. Instead of traveling long distances in search of food, these animals remain suspended in place for extended periods. Their bodies maintain balance within the surrounding water, often supported by buoyant tissues or specialized internal structures that reduce the effort required to stay at a chosen depth. While they wait, their senses remain active. Large eyes gather the faint illumination drifting from above, detecting subtle silhouettes or passing shapes. In other species, sensitive lateral line systems perceive tiny vibrations moving through the water, revealing the presence of nearby animals even when visibility remains extremely limited. The predator holds its position. Fins move slowly, just enough to maintain orientation against weak currents. Muscles stay relaxed, conserving strength for the single moment when a quick burst of motion becomes necessary. Minutes may pass without activity, and then much longer stretches of time may follow in the same quiet posture. In the twilight zone, such patience carries clear advantages. Prey often moves through the water column while feeding or drifting with slow currents. A hunter that remains still becomes difficult to detect, blending with the surrounding environment while observing the movements unfolding nearby. When a small fish or crustacean approaches within reach, the predator can respond with sudden speed. The strike itself lasts only a fraction of a second. Jaws open, the body lunges forward, and the target disappears into the predator's mouth before it can react. Immediately afterward, the hunter returns to stillness, resuming its suspended position in the dim water. Many animals adapted for this strategy possess body shapes suited for quiet hovering. Some fish carry elongated forms that reduce resistance in the water while allowing subtle adjustments in position. Others have fins positioned to maintain balance with minimal movement. Even predators that appear delicate often hide strong muscles capable of delivering swift bursts of acceleration when the opportunity appears. Camouflage also supports this approach. Dark coloration or reflective surfaces allow the predator's outline to merge with the surrounding water, making it difficult for passing animals to recognize danger until they have already moved too close. In the low-light conditions of the twilight zone, even small advantages in concealment can determine the success of a hunt. The rhythm of ambush hunting follows the broader pace of life in these depths. Long intervals of waiting alternate with brief moments of intense activity. By limiting movement to these short bursts, predators preserve their energy reserves while remaining ready for the rare occasions when prey drifts within range. Some species even position themselves in locations where food naturally passes more frequently. Areas influenced by gentle currents or drifting particles may attract smaller animals that feed along the flow, creating quiet feeding grounds where ambush predators can remain concealed. Through these methods, hunters of the twilight zone maintain their role within the midwater ecosystem. They drift quietly among the other inhabitants of this dim layer, almost indistinguishable from the surrounding environment. Only when prey ventures too near does their presence become visible, revealed in the swift movement of a strike that ends as quickly as it begins. Then the water grows still again, and the predator resumes its silent watch within the darkened ocean. Forms in the twilight zone often appear unusual when compared with animals living in shallower seas. Shapes become elongated, delicate, and sometimes strangely disproportionate, as if the rules that guide the bodies of surface creatures have quietly shifted in the dim layers of the ocean. Many midwater fish possess bodies that stretch into long, narrow lines. These thin forms reduce resistance as the animals move through the water, allowing them to glide with minimal effort. Instead of broad muscles designed for powerful swimming, their frames emphasize efficiency. A slender body requires less energy to push forward, especially when motion remains slow and deliberate. The head may appear small, in comparison with the length of the body, or sometimes the opposite occurs, with the mouth extending outward in an exaggerated shape that helps capture passing prey. In either case, the overall design reflects the same principle of conserving energy while remaining capable of sudden action when necessary. Within these bodies, the skeleton often becomes lighter and more flexible. Bones remain thin and sometimes partially reduced, providing enough structure to support movement without adding unnecessary weight. The surrounding tissues may contain higher proportions of water or soft materials that maintain buoyancy while reducing the effort required to stay suspended in the water column. This fragility can make some Twilight Zone species appear almost delicate. When brought to the surface, their bodies sometimes lose the firm shape they maintained in deeper water. The pressure and gentle support provided by the surrounding ocean help hold their structures in balance, allowing forms that might seem impractical in other environments. Long fins or trailing extensions appear on certain species as well. These appendages may not contribute strongly to propulsion, yet they assist with stability while the animal drifts or glides through the water. Slight movements of these fins help maintain orientation against subtle currents, reducing the need for constant muscular effort. In many cases, the unusual proportions seen in Twilight Zone animals arise from the challenge of living where resources remain limited. Food does not appear frequently enough to support bodies that demand high energy expenditure. Evolution, therefore, favors designs that require less fuel to maintain. Narrow frames, lightweight tissues, and reduced skeletal density all contribute to lowering the metabolic cost of daily survival. Some fish even contain oil-filled tissues or other buoyant substances that help counteract the natural tendency to sink. By balancing their internal density with the surrounding seawater, they remain suspended without continuous swimming. This balance allows animals to hold position quietly while observing the environment around them. Other species develop large mouths attached to relatively thin bodies. The mouth opens wide to capture prey whenever the opportunity appears, while the rest of the body remains streamlined and economical. In environments where meals may arrive unpredictably, the ability to seize food quickly becomes valuable. Taken together, these features create a collection of body plans rarely seen elsewhere in the ocean. Slender fish drift through the midwater layers with elongated silhouettes. Fragile bones support bodies that appear almost weightless. Long fins and delicate extensions adjust their orientation with small movements that barely disturb the surrounding water. Within the Twilight Zone, shape becomes an expression of efficiency. Every curve and proportion reflects the quiet demands of an environment where energy remains precious, and survival depends on designs that allow animals to exist with minimal effort while waiting patiently for the next opportunity to feed. From below, the ocean often appears brighter than the water surrounding it. Even in the Twilight Zone, faint illumination from distant surface layers travels downward through the sea, spreading into a pale glow that fills the water above many drifting animals. For creatures viewed against this dim brightness, the body can appear as a dark outline. Predators scanning the water from beneath rely on this contrast. A small fish or shrimp passing overhead may form a shadow against the faint light filtering through the ocean. In such conditions, even a well-camouflaged body can reveal itself as a silhouette. Some Twilight Zone animals solve this problem in an unexpected way. Instead of hiding from the light above, they produce light of their own. This strategy is known as counterillumination. Along the underside of the animal's body lie rows of tiny photophores, small organs capable of generating controlled glows through biochemical reactions. Each photophore emits light that spreads softly into the surrounding water. The brightness of these lights can be adjusted with surprising precision. By sensing the intensity of the faint illumination above, the animal alters the strength of its own glow until it closely matches the background light. When viewed from below, the artificial light blends with the natural glow descending through the ocean. The result softens the animal's outline. Instead of appearing as a dark shape blocking the light, the body becomes difficult to distinguish from the surrounding brightness. The glowing underside effectively cancels the shadow that would otherwise reveal the animal's presence. Several groups of midwater fish employ this method. Lanternfish display neat rows of photophores arranged along their bellies, forming patterns that allow them to balance their brightness against the faint overhead glow. Certain squid species possess similar light-producing organs embedded within their skin, allowing them to control their visibility as they hover in the water. These systems require careful coordination between sensory perception and light production. Specialized receptors detect the brightness of the surrounding environment, sending signals that regulate how strongly the photophores shine. The animal continuously adjusts its glow as lighting conditions shift during the day or while it changes depth. The process occurs quietly and automatically, often without noticeable flickering. When counterillumination functions effectively, the body of the animal merges with the light above it. Predators searching for silhouettes may pass directly beneath without recognizing the presence of prey overhead. In the twilight zone, where vision relies heavily on faint contrasts, even small reductions in shadow can provide significant protection. Counterillumination also influences the daily movements of many species. As animals rise or descend through the water column during nighttime migrations, they encounter changes in brightness. Their photophores respond by altering intensity, maintaining the delicate balance between body glow and surrounding light. The ocean thus becomes filled with organisms quietly adjusting their own illumination. From a distance, these animals do not appear to shine brightly. Instead, their lights remain subtle, carefully tuned to blend with the dim environment around them. Within the midwater layers, countless individuals drift through the ocean carrying these hidden lamps beneath their bodies. Each glow contributes to a delicate camouflage system shaped by the interplay between darkness and the faint light filtering from the distant surface above. Far above the seafloor, yet well below the bright surface waters, certain larger hunters travel quietly through the twilight zone. Among them are sharks adapted to this dim environment, predators that move through the midwater layers, following the shifting paths of smaller animals, rising and descending each day. These sharks rarely appear in large groups. Most glide alone through the open ocean, their bodies shaped for efficient cruising across long distances. The outline remains familiar, a streamlined form with strong tails and gently curved fins that guide steady movement through the water. Yet several details reveal how closely these species are tuned to life in the twilight zone. One such hunter is the cookie-cutter shark, a small but unusual species that inhabits deeper ocean layers during the day. Its body is compact and cylindrical, with large eyes positioned to gather faint light. The skin carries a dark brown coloration that blends smoothly with the surrounding water, allowing the shark to approach prey without drawing attention. Like many animals of the midwater community, this shark possesses luminous organs along its underside. The glow produced by these photophores helps soften the shadow the body would otherwise cast against the dim brightness filtering from above. By reducing its silhouette, the shark becomes harder to detect for animals swimming beneath it. During the night, when migrating fish move upward through the ocean, these sharks rise as well. Their feeding strategy differs from many other predators. Instead of swallowing prey whole, the cookie-cutter shark uses a circular mouth filled with sharp teeth to remove small plugs of flesh from larger animals that pass nearby. Fish, squid, and even marine mammals may carry round marks left by these encounters. Other Twilight Zone sharks rely on more conventional hunting methods. Lantern sharks represent a diverse group living in deeper layers of the ocean. Though generally small in size, they carry several adaptations suited for dim surroundings. Their eyes remain proportionally large, helping them detect faint movement in the water column. Along their bodies run patterns of photophores that emit soft light. These glowing patterns may serve several functions. The light can reduce the shark's outline when viewed from below, much like the counterillumination seen in smaller fish. At the same time, the photophores may help individuals recognize others of their species, creating subtle signals that travel through the darkness. The movements of these sharks often follow the daily rhythm of the midwater ecosystem. As vast populations of fish and other animals travel upward during the night, the sharks patrol these same routes, taking advantage of the temporary abundance of prey. When daylight approaches and the smaller animals descend again, the sharks gradually return to deeper layers where light remains faint. Their bodies support this quiet roaming. Flexible skeletons and efficient muscles allow them to swim steadily without exhausting energy reserves. Sensitive sensory systems detect vibrations or electrical signals produced by nearby animals, guiding the shark toward potential prey even when visibility remains limited. In the Twilight Zone, these predators occupy an important position within the midwater community. They regulate populations of smaller fish, while also becoming prey for larger ocean hunters that occasionally pass through the same layers. Their presence reflects the balance of life within this dim region, where predators and prey move together through the shifting depths. Through steady movement and careful sensory awareness, Twilight Zone sharks continue their silent patrols across the open ocean, following the rhythms of the animals that rise and fall through the dim water each day. Far from sunlight and weather, the Twilight Zone quietly participates in processes that influence the entire planet. The animals drifting through these depths do more than hunt or avoid predators. Through their daily movements and feeding habits, they help transport material through the ocean in ways that connect surface waters to the vast interior of the sea. Among the substances carried through this system is carbon. Carbon moves constantly through Earth's atmosphere, oceans, and living organisms. At the ocean surface, microscopic plants, known as phytoplankton, absorb carbon dioxide from the surrounding water while using sunlight to grow. These tiny producers form the base of marine food webs, converting dissolved carbon into organic matter that supports countless other creatures. When small animals feed on phytoplankton, the carbon contained in those cells becomes part of their own bodies. Larger predators then consume these animals, transferring the same carbon further through the chain of life. Much of this activity occurs within the upper layers of the ocean, where sunlight fuels continuous growth and feeding. Yet the story does not remain confined to those bright waters. Each evening, vast numbers of fish and other organisms rise from deeper layers toward the surface to feed. During these nighttime journeys, they consume plankton and other drifting food, incorporating the carbon from these meals into their tissues. Before daylight returns, the animals descend again into the Twilight Zone. Through this repeated movement, carbon captured near the surface travels downward inside living bodies. The animals digest their meals while resting in deeper water, releasing waste products that sink further into the ocean. These particles carry organic carbon away from the surface layers where it originally formed. Scientists often describe this process as part of the ocean's biological pump. The term refers to the collection of biological activities that transport carbon from sunlit waters toward deeper regions of the sea. While microscopic organisms contribute to this movement through sinking particles, migrating animals add another pathway by physically carrying carbon with them as they travel between layers. The twilight zone plays an important role in this system. Because so many animals gather within these depths during the day, the material they release accumulates there rather than remaining near the surface. Over time, some of this carbon continues sinking toward deeper parts of the ocean, where it may remain stored for long periods. This storage influences the balance of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. When carbon becomes trapped in deep ocean waters or sediments, it remains isolated from the air above. Without these processes, more carbon dioxide would remain in the atmosphere, potentially altering global temperatures over long timescales. The activity of twilight zone animals therefore links individual feeding events with planetary cycles. Each migration, each meal consumed near the surface and digested at depth contributes a small portion to this ongoing transfer of material. Billions of animals repeating the same journey every day create a steady movement of carbon through the ocean. Though the creatures involved are often small, their combined effect becomes significant. By carrying organic material into deeper layers and releasing it there, they help maintain the ocean's ability to absorb and store carbon from the atmosphere. The twilight zone thus acts as an active corridor within Earth's climate system, quietly guiding elements through the vast interior of the sea, while life continues its slow rhythms beneath the surface. Across the open ocean, ships sometimes travel above waters that appear empty to the eye. The surface may stretch unbroken to the horizon, with no visible sign of the life that occupies the deeper layers below. Yet, instruments lowered into these waters reveal a different picture, one that suggests the twilight zone contains an extraordinary abundance of living creatures. Much of this understanding comes from the quiet work of sonar. By sending pulses of sound downward and recording the echoes that return, researchers can detect objects scattered through the water column. When these signals encounter animals such as fish or shrimp, part of the sound reflects back toward the ship. The strength and pattern of the returning echoes help scientists estimate how much life occupies a particular region. During surveys across many ocean basins, these echoes have revealed dense layers of organisms suspended in midwater. The signals appear as broad bands stretching for long distances beneath research vessels. At certain depths, the echoes become so strong that the layer can resemble a continuous surface, even though it consists entirely of living animals drifting through the water. These observations suggest that the twilight zone contains vast populations of small fish and invertebrates. Lanternfish in particular appear to dominate many of these layers. Although each individual fish remains small, their combined numbers become remarkable when measured across entire ocean regions. Schools and loose aggregations extend through large volumes of water, forming communities that span hundreds of kilometers. Scientists refer to the total mass of living organisms within an ecosystem as biomass. When researchers estimate the biomass present in the twilight zone, the results often exceed earlier expectations. Studies combining sonar measurements with deep water sampling indicate that midwater fish populations may be far larger than once believed. In some regions, the estimated biomass of lanternfish alone reaches many billions of tons. Such numbers suggest that the twilight zone could contain one of the largest collections of vertebrate life on Earth. Much of this abundance remains hidden from casual observation because the animals occupy deep layers of open water far from coastlines or shallow reefs. Even modern exploration faces challenges when attempting to measure these populations accurately. Different species reflect sonar signals in slightly different ways, and some organisms may avoid research vessels or change depth in response to disturbances. As a result, scientists often combine several methods when studying the midwater ecosystem. Acoustic surveys, net samples, and camera observations together help build a clearer picture of the communities living within the Twilight Zone. Over time, these approaches have revealed consistent patterns. Large concentrations of fish appear across many parts of the global ocean, often forming layers that shift gently through the water column as environmental conditions change. The presence of such widespread populations supports the idea that the Twilight Zone holds enormous reservoirs of life. These fish also influence other parts of the marine ecosystem. Predators traveling through deeper waters depend on midwater species as a food source. Marine mammals, larger fish, and squid may descend into these layers to hunt, linking the Twilight Zone with animals living both above and below. At the same time, the daily migrations of these fish help move organic material through the ocean, contributing to broader cycles that connect surface productivity with deeper environments. As researchers continue exploring the midwater realm, each new survey adds further detail to the picture. What once seemed like a dim and sparsely populated region now appears to host immense communities of animals, suspended across the twilight depths in numbers far greater than earlier generations of scientists imagined. Far from reefs, coastlines, or the distant seabed, there exists a realm where life unfolds entirely within open water. In this part of the ocean, the ground lies far below, sometimes thousands of meters beneath the drifting animals above. Many creatures of the Twilight Zone never encounter that distant floor during their entire lives. They belong to what scientists describe as midwater ecosystems. In these environments, the water column itself becomes the living space. Instead of relying on rocks, sand, or solid structures for shelter, animals remain suspended within the surrounding ocean. Their movements take place in 3 dimensions: rising, sinking, and drifting through layers of water that extend far beyond any physical boundary. For these organisms, the seafloor remains an unseen landscape. Some species hatch from eggs that float freely within the water column. From their earliest moments, they begin life suspended in the midwater environment, carried gently by currents and subtle shifts in density. As they grow, their bodies develop features that allow them to remain balanced within the surrounding water without sinking toward the depths below. Buoyancy plays a central role in this way of life. Certain fish contain oils or specialized internal structures that help counteract the weight of their tissues. These materials allow the animals to hover with minimal effort, maintaining their position in the water column without constant swimming. Other species rely on bodies composed largely of water, reducing density so that the surrounding ocean supports them naturally. Invertebrates drifting through the Twilight Zone often display especially delicate forms. Gelatinous organisms extend thin structures into the water, capturing passing food while remaining almost weightless. Transparent bodies and fragile tissues help maintain buoyancy while also blending visually with the surrounding environment. Even active swimmers remain closely tied to this suspended existence. Fish, squid, and other mobile animals navigate through the water column while rarely approaching solid surfaces. Their hunting grounds consist of open space where prey appears as drifting shapes rather than creatures hiding among rocks or vegetation. Because these animals do not depend on the seafloor, their distribution can stretch across vast regions of the ocean. Entire communities travel slowly with large-scale currents that flow through the midwater layers. While individuals may swim short distances to feed or avoid predators, the overall population gradually shifts across the ocean as water masses move beneath the surface. The environment surrounding them remains dynamic. Temperature, pressure, and light conditions change with depth, creating vertical layers that influence where certain species gather. Some animals remain within narrow bands of water where conditions suit their physiology, while others travel between layers during daily migrations. Despite these movements, the essential feature of their habitat remains constant. The water column itself forms both their landscape and their shelter. Instead of cliffs or valleys, the animals navigate subtle gradients in temperature or density. Instead of caves or coral branches, they rely on camouflage, transparency, or bioluminescent signals to survive within open space. This suspended world supports an intricate web of interactions. Predators hunt drifting prey, gelatinous colonies intercept particles of organic matter, and small fish travel in loose groups through the dim layers. Each organism participates in a community shaped entirely by the properties of the surrounding water. Within the twilight zone, life persists without any need for solid ground, unfolding in the vast and fluid environment that stretches quietly between the distant surface and the unseen depths below. Exploration of the twilight zone has never depended on a single tool. The environment lies far beyond the reach of ordinary diving and remains difficult to observe directly from the surface. To understand this dim region of the ocean, scientists gradually developed machines capable of traveling where human bodies cannot easily follow. Among the most important of these machines are remotely operated vehicles, often known as ROVs. These robotic explorers descend through the water column while connected to research vessels by long cables. Through these cables flow electrical power and streams of data, allowing operators aboard the ship to guide the vehicle and watch the surrounding environment in real time. Cameras mounted on the vehicle send live images upward, revealing animals drifting through the twilight zone as they move through the water. Mechanical arms attached to many ROVs allow researchers to interact gently with their surroundings. Using these tools, operators can collect fragile organisms without relying on large nets that might damage delicate bodies. Samples are placed into special containers designed to preserve the animals during the slow return to the surface. While ROVs remain connected to the ship above, another type of vehicle travels independently through deeper layers. Submersibles, capable of carrying human observers, descend within thick pressure, resistant hulls that protect the occupants from the enormous force of surrounding seawater. Inside these compact chambers, scientists look outward through reinforced windows while guiding the craft with small thrusters. This direct observation offers a valuable perspective. Rather than studying animals only after they reach the surface, researchers can watch them moving naturally through the midwater environment. Subtle behaviors become visible, including how creatures interact with one another, how they respond to light, and how they drift within gentle ocean currents. Recording these scenes requires specialized cameras. Ordinary imaging equipment struggles in environments where illumination remains extremely faint. Low-light cameras designed for deep ocean research contain highly sensitive sensors capable of capturing images with very little available light. Some systems rely on soft red illumination that remains less disruptive to many animals than bright white lights. With these cameras, scientists observe details that were once hidden. Fish glide through the dim water, while tiny organisms drift past the lens. Transparent animals become visible against the dark background, and bioluminescent flashes appear as small bursts of color moving through the surrounding space. Sound-based technologies also play an important role in exploring the Twilight Zone. Sonar systems send pulses of acoustic energy through the water and measure the echoes that return after encountering objects below. By analyzing the timing and strength of these echoes, researchers can create detailed maps of the structures and communities present within the water column. Advanced sonar instruments reveal layers of organisms spread across wide regions of the ocean. These acoustic images show how populations shift during daily migrations and how dense groups of animals gather within particular depths. The information helps scientists understand the distribution of life across the Twilight Zone without disturbing the animals themselves. As these technologies continue to improve, the midwater ocean becomes easier to observe. Vehicles travel deeper and remain underwater longer. Cameras record clearer images in faint light. Acoustic systems map the hidden populations drifting through the water column. Together, these tools open quiet windows into a region that once remained largely unseen, allowing researchers to explore the vast Twilight Zone with increasing clarity, while its delicate communities continue their slow movements beneath the waves. Even after decades of research, the Twilight Zone continues to reveal animals that scientists have never seen before. Each expedition into the midwater depths brings the possibility that something unfamiliar will appear in the camera's view, drifting slowly through the dim water where few human observers have ever looked directly. The ocean still holds many undiscovered species. When research vehicles descend through these layers, their cameras sometimes capture organisms whose shapes and movements do not match any known description. Transparent creatures glide past with unfamiliar structures extending from their bodies. Small fish appear whose features differ from species already cataloged in scientific records. These encounters often begin as quiet observations on video screens aboard research vessels. Scientists watching the live feed may notice an animal with unusual fins, an unfamiliar arrangement of luminous organs, or body proportions that do not correspond to previously identified species. The discovery does not happen with dramatic fanfare. Instead, it arrives gradually as researchers compare images and begin to suspect that the creature belongs to a species that has never been formally described. Confirming such discoveries requires careful study. When possible, scientists attempt to collect specimens using delicate sampling equipment carried by remotely operated vehicles. The animals are brought to the surface in protected containers where their anatomy can be examined more closely. Measurements, tissue samples, and genetic analysis help determine whether the organism represents a species new to science. In many cases, the number of individuals observed remains extremely small. A single encounter may provide the first glimpse of a creature that lives across wide regions of the ocean, yet rarely comes into view. The vastness of the midwater environment means that entire populations may exist far from the routes traveled by research ships. Not every discovery involves new species. Unexpected behaviors often emerge when animals are observed alive in their natural surroundings. Early studies relied heavily on specimens retrieved from nets, yet many delicate organisms lost their original posture or movement during the journey to the surface. With modern cameras and submersibles, researchers now witness how these animals behave while drifting through the Twilight Zone. Some species display feeding strategies that were previously unknown. Gelatinous predators extend long filaments into the water and capture passing prey with surprising speed. Fish that once seemed passive reveal bursts of agility when pursuing small animals nearby. Even organisms believed to drift aimlessly sometimes demonstrate subtle control over their movement as they navigate gentle ocean currents. Interactions between species also become visible. Predators approach their prey with careful positioning. Small fish gather in loose formations that shift and dissolve as they travel through the water column. Bioluminescent signals flash briefly between individuals, hinting at forms of communication that scientists are still working to understand. Each observation adds another piece to a larger picture of life within the Twilight Zone. Because the region covers such a large portion of the ocean, even small discoveries can reshape scientific understanding. New species expand the known diversity of midwater ecosystems, while unexpected behaviors reveal strategies that animals use to survive in an environment where food and light remain limited. For researchers studying these depths, the sense of discovery remains constant. Every expedition carries the possibility that a camera lens will capture something never documented before. Within the dim layers between sunlight and darkness, unfamiliar creatures continue to drift quietly through the water, waiting to be noticed by the next careful observer passing through their hidden world. Across the open ocean, interest has begun to focus on the enormous populations of small fish living within the Twilight Zone. For decades, these communities remained largely untouched, hidden far below the surface where fishing vessels rarely operated. As scientific studies revealed how abundant certain midwater species might be, attention gradually turned toward the possibility of harvesting them. Among the species attracting particular interest are lanternfish. These small glowing fish exist in vast numbers across many ocean regions. Their combined biomass may rival or even exceed that of some surface fisheries that have supported human consumption for generations. Because lanternfish feed on plankton and gather in dense layers, they appear to represent a large potential resource. Industrial fishing operations have begun exploring ways to reach these deeper populations. Specialized nets capable of operating at greater depths are being developed to target fish living within the Twilight Zone. If successful, these technologies could allow vessels to capture large quantities of midwater species that previously remained beyond the reach of commercial fisheries. The possibility raises important questions about the balance of the ocean ecosystem. Lanternfish and other midwater species occupy a central position within marine food webs. They feed on small drifting organisms and in turn become prey for a wide range of larger animals. Squid, tuna, dolphins, and many other predators depend on these fish as a reliable food source. Removing large numbers of midwater fish could influence the availability of food for these predators. Changes in the abundance of lanternfish might ripple through multiple layers of the ocean ecosystem. Predators that rely on these fish could encounter greater difficulty finding prey, while the plankton populations consumed by lanternfish might increase if fewer fish remain to feed on them. Scientists studying the Twilight Zone often emphasize that many aspects of this ecosystem remain only partially understood. Although acoustic surveys and research expeditions have revealed enormous populations of midwater animals, the details of their interactions continue to unfold gradually. Food webs in the open ocean can be complex, linking species across wide distances and different depths. Because of this complexity, even moderate levels of industrial fishing might produce effects that extend beyond the targeted species. Another concern involves the slow pace of life, common among many Twilight Zone organisms. Some species grow gradually and may reproduce less frequently than fish living in more productive surface waters. If harvesting removes large numbers of individuals, faster than populations can replace them, recovery could take considerable time. These uncertainties have led many researchers to encourage careful study before large-scale fisheries expand into the twilight zone. Scientific monitoring can help estimate population sizes, migration patterns, and reproductive cycles. By understanding these factors more clearly, it becomes easier to evaluate how fishing activity might influence the broader ecosystem. The twilight zone represents one of the largest habitats on Earth, yet much of its biology remains under active investigation. As new technologies make these depths more accessible, the decisions made about their use will shape how this vast midwater community continues to function. Lanternfish and other species drifting through the dim layers do not exist in isolation. They form connections that link the ocean's surface, its deeper waters, and the many predators that move between them. Within this quiet region of the sea, the balance between exploration, resource use, and conservation continues to develop as scientists and societies learn more about the living world suspended between sunlight and darkness. Nightfall alters the structure of the ocean in ways that remain invisible from the surface. The water may appear calm under the fading light of evening, yet far below, entire communities begin to shift through the depths. Movements unfold gradually, spreading through the midwater layers until the twilight zone becomes part of a vast vertical transformation. Animals that spent the day resting in deeper water begin to travel upward. Fish glide slowly toward shallower layers, accompanied by shrimp, squid, and countless smaller organisms that share the same nightly journey. The ascent does not occur in sudden bursts. Instead, it spreads through the water column like a quiet tide rising through the open ocean. As these animals move, the composition of life at different depths changes. Areas that appeared sparse during daylight hours gradually fill with drifting bodies. Small fish gather into loose groups as they approach feeding grounds where plankton and other tiny organisms become more accessible in the darkness. This nightly migration reshapes the midwater ecosystem. Predators that rely on these animals respond to the movement as well. Larger fish and squid follow the rising populations, maintaining a careful distance while observing the shifting concentrations of prey. The ocean becomes layered with activity as hunters and drifting organisms travel together through the water column. Each species participates in this transformation according to its own needs. Some creatures remain within narrow depth ranges, moving only short distances while adjusting to changes in light. Others travel hundreds of meters upward before returning again toward morning. The result is a gradual rearrangement of life throughout the twilight zone. As the hours of darkness deepen, feeding becomes more active. Fish intercept plankton drifting through the water, while squid capture smaller animals that wander into reach. Gelatinous organisms extend delicate feeding structures into the passing currents. The midwater layers fill with quiet interactions as organisms search for nourishment during the limited hours when darkness offers greater protection. Predators move carefully through these temporary feeding grounds. Sharks and larger fish patrol the areas where prey gathers most densely, adjusting their position as the migrating animals shift within the water. Their movements remain controlled and efficient, conserving energy while following the vertical pathways created by the nightly ascent. Even subtle environmental factors influence the pattern. Temperature gradients and currents shape the depths where certain species travel. Some animals pause within intermediate layers before continuing upward, while others remain suspended at particular depths where conditions suit their physiology. Throughout the night, the ocean's internal structure continues to evolve. What appeared as quiet darkness during the day becomes a dynamic environment filled with movement and feeding. Small organisms drift between layers. Predators pass through the shifting populations, and countless interactions unfold within the dim water. Eventually, the first hints of daylight begin to filter through the surface above. As brightness slowly increases, the migration reverses. Animals that rose toward shallower layers begin their return to deeper water. Groups of fish sink gradually into the twilight zone, followed by the predators that had trailed behind them during the night. The water column rearranges itself once again. Feeding activity diminishes as organisms settle into the depths where they will remain through the daylight hours. The vast movement that transformed the ocean overnight becomes less visible as the midwater layers grow quieter. Yet the pattern never truly stops. Each evening brings the same gradual ascent, and each morning the same descent, creating a daily rhythm that reshapes the twilight zone as life rises and falls through the ocean with the steady passage of night and day. Knowledge of the twilight zone remains incomplete. Even after decades of research vessels, instruments, and deep ocean expeditions, scientists have learned that this vast layer contains immense populations of animals and complex ecological relationships, yet much of the environment still lies beyond direct observation. Large portions of the midwater ocean remain only briefly visited. Research ships can explore limited areas during each expedition, lowering vehicles or instruments into selected regions, while countless other stretches of ocean remain unseen. Because the twilight zone extends across nearly every ocean basin on Earth, the total area requiring study is immense. Many animals that live there are rarely observed alive. Some species appear only in occasional video recordings captured by remotely operated vehicles drifting through the water column. Others become known primarily from specimens collected in nets, often retrieved after long journeys toward the surface. In these cases, the animals arrive far removed from their natural environment, making it difficult to understand how they behave while living in the midwater world. Even when researchers encounter the same species multiple times, important details may remain uncertain. Feeding habits, reproduction, and daily movements often occur beyond the limited time that scientists can spend observing an individual organism. The animals may disappear into the surrounding water long before their behavior can be fully documented. Entire groups of organisms may still await discovery. The twilight zone contains vast open spaces where research vehicles have seldom traveled. Within these regions, unfamiliar species could drift unnoticed through the water column. Some may exist in small populations that rarely intersect with the paths of exploration equipment. Others may inhabit depths or geographic regions that scientists have only recently begun to study. Technological advances continue to expand the reach of ocean research, yet even the most advanced tools provide only glimpses of this enormous habitat. Cameras illuminate small areas around the vehicles that carry them, while sonar instruments detect echoes that reveal the presence of animals without always identifying the species involved. These methods help scientists piece together the structure of midwater ecosystems, but many questions remain open. Researchers are still working to understand how different species interact, how energy flows through the community, and how environmental changes might influence the delicate balance within these depths. Because the twilight zone connects surface waters with the deeper ocean, its biological processes influence a wide range of marine environments. Yet, the precise details of these connections remain the subject of ongoing investigation. Each expedition adds new information, yet also reveals further complexity. Unexpected organisms appear in camera footage. Unusual behaviors emerge during observation, and previously unknown relationships between species begin to take shape. Every discovery suggests that the midwater ocean holds more variety than earlier generations of scientists imagined. The scale of the environment ensures that exploration will continue for many years. Thousands of meters of water stretch across every ocean basin, forming a habitat that supports countless drifting animals. Many of them remain known only from brief encounters or indirect measurements gathered by instruments passing through their world. Within the Twilight Zone, entire communities persist quietly beyond the limits of current knowledge. As researchers return again and again with improved tools and growing curiosity, the dim layers between sunlight and darkness continue to reveal new details, reminding scientists that much of this vast ocean ecosystem still waits to be understood. Between the bright surface and the silent depths below lies a realm that few human eyes have truly seen. It stretches across the oceans of the world as a broad, dim corridor where light fades into soft blue shadows and life continues quietly beyond ordinary view. This is the Twilight Zone. Across these depths, entire communities of animals drift, hunt, glow, and migrate through water that rarely receives direct attention from the world above. For much of human history, this region remained almost entirely hidden. Ships passed across the surface without knowing how many creatures were suspended far beneath their hulls. Even today, much of this ecosystem reveals itself only through patient exploration. Cameras lowered into the water capture brief scenes of delicate animals moving through the dim layers. Sonar instruments register the presence of vast populations that form shifting bands within the midwater. Research vehicles glide slowly through the darkness, illuminating fragments of a world that extends far beyond the reach of their lights. Within this environment, life continues in remarkable variety. Small fish gather in drifting groups, their bodies carrying faint patterns of light. Transparent organisms move almost invisibly through the water. Squid glide silently through the open space, while predators watch for subtle motion nearby. Gelatinous animals extend fragile structures that intercept passing food carried by gentle currents. Each species contributes to a quiet balance shaped by the conditions of the Twilight Zone. Food arrives slowly, and energy must be used carefully. Camouflage takes many forms, from mirrored scales to glowing photophores and nearly transparent bodies. Vision adapts to the faint illumination filtering from above, while some creatures produce their own light to navigate or conceal their presence. At night, the structure of this hidden world changes. Animals rise toward shallower waters to feed, then return again to deeper layers before daylight strengthens. These movements reshape the ocean daily, carrying energy and nutrients between distant parts of the marine environment. Through these rhythms, the Twilight Zone links many parts of the ocean together. Surface productivity sends organic material downward. Midwater species intercept and consume it while predators travel through the same layers in search of prey. Even the chemistry of Earth's climate becomes connected to these depths as migrating animals help move carbon through the water column. Yet despite these discoveries, the Twilight Zone remains one of Earth's least explored ecosystems. Its vast size and depth make complete observation impossible with present technology. Many animals appear only briefly on research cameras before disappearing into the surrounding darkness. Entire populations drift through waters that scientists have never directly surveyed. The ocean continues to hold far more life than human knowledge has yet described. Future expeditions will likely reveal new species, unfamiliar behaviors, and unexpected connections between organisms living in this dim environment. Each journey into the Twilight Zone expands understanding while also reminding researchers how much still remains beyond their reach. Within the quiet blue water between sunlight and darkness, life thrives in forms both delicate and resilient. Fish with glowing patterns travel through the open sea. Transparent animals drift like fragments of living glass. Predators move patiently through the shadows, while faint bioluminescent sparks flicker in the distance. The twilight zone endures as a hidden world suspended within the ocean itself, vast, complex, and still largely unknown beneath the surface of the planet we share.